I was going to ask a question, Christopher. I was going to ask. You mentioned that you learned woodworking at school.
Yeah.
And I was interested to know: do you still make anything?
Do I make television programs? Does that count? No. I've become a sort of hobbyist, and I do quite a lot of DIY type things. But no, I'll tell you. Actually, I've got behind me somewhere. Yeah, I'll show you something. I was so proud of the things I made at school that here's a pot I made when I was 8 years old. It has a train going around it, and actually, I think probably the person in charge of the workshop did the body for me, and I just did the painting. But never mind, I'm terribly proud of that. Our society goes back to the Arts and Crafts Exhibition Society, which kicked off under Walter Crane, who was my predecessor as head of the Royal College of Art in 1887. And they had three aims, which are very specific. Firstly, give exhibiting opportunities to what they call decorative artists. That Crane said, everyone talks about the Royal Academy show and the British Museum and all the great national galleries, and they talk about fine art all the time. There seems to be no platform for this other kind of art. And that was number one. Number two, how can you get people to ignore the distinction between fine and applied art? And thirdly, what about an organization to represent the makers? He was worried that even then that art education was becoming too bureaucratic and that government organizations would find it difficult to represent the makers. So you've got the exhibiting opportunities, you've got the fine and applied art snobbery, and you've got the representing the makers. And those are very specific aims, actually. So he sets up the Arts and Crafts Exhibition Society in 1887. Morris takes over a few years later. And if you look at the people who exhibited and who organized the exhibitions, they are the big names of the arts and crafts movement. So you've got Morris, you've got Crane, you've got Ford Madox Brown, Cobden Sanderson, all these people. And they all wrote about it. So my second point is that in those days, they were very clear that they needed to be ambassadors for their craft. And so they all wrote, there was a famous series of books that came out called the Artistic Crafts Handbooks, where members of our society all contributed volumes about their particular area. So there's one on furniture, there's one on embroidery, there's one on ceramics, and so on. And so the society was the mouthpiece for debates about the crafts. When you look at what's happened to the crafts in the last 10 years, I always finish the Sunday newspapers on Tuesday, and I've just finished the Sunday papers. And you open the Culture magazine of the Sunday Times, it is full of lifestyle articles about one-offs, about the crafts. And there's also that everyone's fed up with the blandness of the digital image. And so one-offs suddenly have a new value. It's a little bit like, I remember when I was running the Royal College, the photography department suddenly started getting interested in Victorian methods of processing film because the blandness of the digital image was irritating them. And it's like printmaking in the 1920s or lithography in the 1920s, that suddenly they become revalorized because everything is so bland out there. Well, the same thing's happened with the crafts. And you see every night on telly, there's a sort of lifestyle program about whether it's a pottery throwdown or jewelry or the repair shop or, endless things. I mean, I really enjoy watching them. But for some reason, that's all happened in a slightly different universe. And the world of the makers hasn't taken advantage of it. So I think, I throw down the gauntlet to the society and say, there's all that appetite out there of interest in the crafts, huge. How do you feed that and reposition yourselves that you're actually in the eye of the storm? I think, I'm very optimistic because the world has caught up with you. When Morris and Crane were crying in the wilderness, all these industrialists said they were wasting their time. No one's interested in craft anymore. That's no longer the case. Everyone is very interested in craft, but they don't quite identify it with the work that your society does, and they should.